Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily for another afternoon and evening here in Peg City. Great to have you with us, Andrew Paterson, along with the CTO, Michael Remis. And we've got a big show, lots to get to today, coming off a memorable one yesterday. If you missed, and we certainly will get to more on the Blackhawks story, Jeff Hamilton from the Winnipeg Free Press, maybe the best person that we could possibly talk to about this, considering all the work that he's done over the past 3+ years into the Graham James saga, who's also on the road with the Winnipeg Jets, is going to join us. We'll talk about last night's game. We'll also specifically dive in with Jeff to the current situation in the aftermath of yesterday's report, and in particular how it pertains to the future of Winnipeg Jets general manager Kevin Cheveldayoff. We'll also talk about the game. JP Vigier is going to pop by. I always love talking to Vij about what's happening on the ice. JP will be our first guest. And then a little later on in the second hour of the program, before we finish up, we'll get to the start of the World Series last night with Dean Millard, who is also involved with the, we talked a few months ago about the UFFL, Andy Mack and JT and the guys that are involved with that kind of crypto fantasy league. Well, they're doing it for baseball as well. So fantasy people will be interested in this, but our main focus will be on last night's big win by the Braves to draw first blood in the best of 7 World Series against the Houston Astros. As we get going, I want to give a big WST thank you to the people that make this show possible every day, and that is our sponsors, including Not Auto Corp, Princess Auto, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Canadian Club Whiskey, Culligan Water, Manitoba Battery, our OGs, Royal Sports, of course, Little Brown Jug Brewing, and Boston Pizza, as well as Princess Auto, and Coolbet Canada, who is our betting partner. Another big night on Coolbet last night. Thank you very much, Nikolai Ehlers. Let's get Remis in here and get going with the program. Remo, how are you today, man?
Hustler, I'm here. We're good. It was definitely an emotional show yesterday, and then we had the game last night, which was I would say an emotional game for different reasons as well. When my friends texted me after, he said, "Wow, they really jetsed the Ducks." Scoring 2 in the last, 80 seconds of the game. Ehlers 2 19 seconds apart. I thought when Anaheim had the go-ahead goal, I thought, they really blew this one. But hey, it's not over till it's over. You don't quit. And Nikolai Ehlers, hadn't scored all year. We weren't worried about him. All of a sudden, he's got 4 points in 6 games. Looks like he's having a great season. Lots to get to from the game. I'm in a good mood from that.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, as far as the game goes yesterday, if you missed yesterday's program, it was a unique one and a very memorable one in that, we kind of started off, we were kicking it around with Mo Khan. We were talking about the Bombers and, the destruction of BC, the West Final being set for Winnipeg. We were going to get to some NFL talk. And during that interview, the details of the report were coming out. And certainly, I mean, it was something that we would have talked about anyways. But because Kevin Cheveldayoff was mentioned being in that meeting, and unable to obviously dive into the report, kind of dealing with the bits and pieces that were coming out, getting quotes, the incredible reporting of Rick Westhead. That really was the focus. I mean, I don't even know if we talked very much about the game. I mean, it was kind of a blur. I appreciate all the kind messages from people as to how it was handled yesterday, because, it is an emotional situation, regardless of Kevin Cheveldayoff's involvement. I mean, it's such a terrible story for the National Hockey League, and it brings so many of us back to some other horrible stains on hockey that have happened in the past. That is something that we will get to with Jeff Hamilton. As of right now, just quickly on that topic, I think things are very much up in the air with the future of Joe Quenneville and Kevin Cheveldayoff. Kevin Cheveldayoff's going to be meeting with Gary Bettman, the commissioner of the National Hockey League, in the coming days. We mentioned Chevy's quote that came out yesterday, which we read, that, he had said that, he has told everything that he knew to the report that's indicated in the report, and he's looking forward to talking to the commissioner. So I will Probably wait to talk more about this with Jeff, who, as I mentioned, is about as much of an expert in this sort of thing as we could possibly have the privilege of talking to on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Be interesting to hear his thoughts on it, as well as being with the team in and around it. And of course, he was in in the media session with Paul Maurice, who, ended up being the first person from the hockey club to speak about this. And, as I mentioned, I don't want to say unfair. I mean, he is the head coach and he does a lot of speaking for it, but this is something that he wasn't involved in, had nothing to do with. We don't know how much he knew or didn't know. So it was a pretty unfortunate situation for the coach to be in yesterday. But that being said, obviously these questions are going to be answered. And until we're able to hear publicly from Kevin Cheveldayoff, presumably post the meeting with Gary Bettman, regardless of how things work out with his continued employment with the hockey club, there will continue to be many, many questions on all of this. I mean, Joel Quenneville is reportedly going to be meeting with the commissioner in the next 24 hours, I believe, in New York City. So all of that we will get to as we get through the program. But if you missed yesterday's show and you'd like more kind of pretty much live, raw commentary on what we were learning and reaction as it happened, hit the YouTube or go back to the podcast. And, it basically starts about 40 minutes in as things started coming out, and that really dominated the program for the rest of the day. And, as I said, I would have loved to have spent more time setting up the Jets and Ducks, but it wasn't really the time or the place to do it. Although we did watch the game last night, and, I think a lot of people were able to, enjoy the game. It was an interesting game, which we'll get to in a minute, and certainly a big win. But, I just wanted to first off say that this story is so much bigger than a game, so much bigger than hockey. There are lives at stake and careers now at stake as well. In addition to what the victims, who should be the first and foremost concern, I think, of everyone when they're diving into this, are concerned. And of course, the bottom line is what can be learned, what can be done from this to prevent this from ever happening again. And again, not to get too much into it, but my biggest concern is if this is happening in 2010 in the National Hockey League, I mean, what does this say about the ability of these predators to still continue to do this in other areas, not just in hockey, but in sports and even beyond the sporting landscape, which is what we focus in on here in Winnipeg, on Winnipeg Sports Talk, but also in all of our daily lives. So we will have more on that with Jeff Hamilton coming up a little later on. All that being said, there was a hockey game last night, and it was no Picasso. Honestly, not a very good game for the Winnipeg Jets overall. It was Connor Hellebuck time. And as I think I joked to you on text stream, it's kind of midway through the second period, the Jets were giving Connor Hellebuck every opportunity to really get in a groove yesterday. And man, was he in one. A couple pretty ugly giveaways, courtesy of Pierre-Luc Dubois in the third period, ended up in the back of the net. But as you mentioned, there it was. It was Nikolai Ehlers doing it not once but twice in the final 90 seconds to turn what could have been a very disappointing regulation loss into a little bit of a larceny of 2 points. Hey, just before I get to you, Remis, hey, Double X Revolution 7049 with the super chat. It's your birthday today, and I did see Aaron Forshaw. What's up, Aaron? Great to see you live in the YouTube chat, saying, wow, what a great day. You share a birthday with Ken Wiebe. Everybody shares a birthday with Ken Wiebe. But Remo, let's get to the game, because as I said, we will talk more about, everything coming out of the Hawks report with Jeff Hamilton. And I don't know. I mean, this was, for a team that, it seemed to have a lot of momentum coming out of those two games at home, didn't look too much like it last night. I mean, I think the Ducks, and Paul Maurice said as much, the Ducks were the better team for the majority of the game. But when you have an elite player like Nikolai Ehlers, who had been so due early in the season.
Okay, I think you're back on.
Okay, we're back. I'm not sure what happened there, folks. Maybe it was just the excitement of Nikolai Ehlers' goal. Maybe it was the shocking turnaround of the game. But whatever it was, I think that we're back right now after a quick little timeout. Although I will tell you, Remis, normally I can see myself and see the display here. That I can't right now. So I'm not sure if you can get to that. All right, now we're back. I think we're back. Sorry about that to everyone watching on YouTube. Remo, let's talk about this turnaround. Nikolai Ehlers with a sniper's goal, to say the least. I still don't know how he did that, how he got it in that minute space above John Gibson's shoulders in between the crossbar and the post, but he did it. That was a true goal scorer's goal. And then the winner 19 seconds later, a little bit more of a fortuitous bounce when you put pucks on the net.
Yes, I mean, that was a crazy finish. That Ehlers, we've kind of been waiting for a breakout from Ehlers. He hadn't scored. He had 1 point coming into the game, and what a game from his line with Andrew Copp and Paul Stastny. Thought Andrew Copp couldn't finish. He looked pretty good.
You love that. You love that every time he scores.
I love it because the chat was ripping him all summer. This guy can't finish. He's not a top line player. He's fit in quite well. That first goal by them, that line, Paul Stastny gets the puck in the slot from Ehlers and passes, like you're in prime shooting area, and passes to Copp. I don't even know how Copp was ready. I would be like, what the hell is this guy doing passing it out of a prime scoring area? But Copp buried it. And then, Ehlers been firing pucks on net all season. It hadn't worked out. How he scored that goal. I thought it was like far corner, but it was actually like the inside. It was an incredible shot. And then next thing you know, they get another face-off. Andrew Copp with the 2 face-off wins there, and he just put it on net and it got past Gibson. So they I don't want to say they got lucky. The Ducks did get a lot of shots. Hellebuyck, again, very, very good. But that line was the story of the game. And another story of the game for me was Pierre-Luc Dubois. I don't know if you knew this, Huss. He played junior with Evgeny Svechnikov. Did you know that they played junior? Wow. Have you heard that one?
I've never heard that before.
That they played junior together? That was the story of the game for me. But actually, for Dubois, he did have a really nice pass to Svechnikov, but a couple pretty lackadaisical plays behind the net, and he'll tell you that. You got to be more sure when you're dipping it back to the D. And then it's a good forecheck for the Ducks. Give them credit too, but you have all the room to skate it out. We've seen him skate. He's a big guy. He's been great for the Jets. Definite bounce back season for him early on. But a couple of careless plays ended up in the back of their net. That was a couple things. But more importantly, him and Svech showing that chemistry that they showed in junior. And how do you break up that line now? They're going to have some decisions. If we may have Wheeler on the ice later this hour, they practice at 2 Central.
I'll tell you what, though. We joke about it because I know that sort of storyline has been beaten to death when he came here. We'll see what happens. And I don't think many of us thought that Svechnikov would be playing up there, but a lot of us didn't. No one could foresee both Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele not being with the club for a significant number of games. So Svechnikov's certainly taken advantage of the opportunity. Dubois has really stepped up. And as far as Dubois goes, yes, there was a couple bad giveaways and just more careless plays in his own end. But I'll give him a lot of credit. He made a back check after that, late in the game that probably prevented that from being out of hand at 4-2. And, a lot of times you've seen players, and I'll try not to compare to last year, but it seemed like he was down at times. Things weren't going well. He got frustrated. I would have understood him being frustrated last night in the third period with what had happened in their own end. But to his credit, he kept on hustling. He kept on working really hard, and he came back and made a big, big back check that kept the Jets in the game and gave them the opportunity to tie the game on Nikolai Ehlers. And you want to talk about, it's very interesting, icing, you talk about icings and face-offs, and people really diminish that, but pretty crazy when you think, Remo, that with all the skill and what the Jets bring to the table, basically it was taking advantage of back-to-back icings by the Anaheim Ducks, who were at one point holding on to a 1-goal lead, that flipped that game in 30 seconds off the stick of Nikolai Ehlers because of the ability to win faceoffs, get the puck, and create scoring chances in the Ducks' end with the game on the line, and of course on the first goal with Connor Hellebuyck on the bench.
Yeah, and how many times, Huss, have you seen a game where one team pulls the goalie, scores, and then takes the lead, and then the other team has to pull their goalie? What a wild finish. And I think full credit to the Ducks. I mean, they made a couple mistakes with Zegras, had the nice pass to Sonny Milano for a nice one-timer goal. We've seen the Ducks now 3 times this year. The Jets go 2-1. You could argue John Gibson single-handedly won that first game, but I think the Ducks are a pretty pesky team. I liked what I saw from a lot of their young players. They do have a mix of veterans as well and a great goalie. So I'm happy we don't have to see them anymore. They got, again, 4 out of the 6 points. You can move on. We'll see, what the lineup is like against LA on Thursday and then San Jose Saturday. But wasn't the prettiest win, Huss. I think, there's maybe a couple shifts where the Ducks had a lot of pressure and they relied a lot on Hellebuck. But, a win's a win, and it's still early. And look, they're still missing Scheifele and Wheeler. And I think they're 3-0 without those guys. The stats don't lie. So, stats don't lie.
Extend the stay.
Yeah.
Let's keep Nathan Beaulieu skating up. By the way, when I saw Beaulieu take that shift at forward, all I can think of was my guy Adam Party. Remember Party back every now and then would get a shift up front, or like why he was in that situation. I can't remember what the circumstances were, but the legend of Adam Party still lives in this city. And whenever you see a defenseman thrown up front the way Nate Beaulieu was last night for a shift or two, you think about our old pal Adam Party, number 2. And I still think of Party every time I see Dylan DeMello wearing number 2. Of course, yeah. Lots of love for Party, the utility man, earlier as well. All right, so they get the win, and the one thing I'll say this about not playing too well, but now having won 3 in a row, you're not going to. Nikolai Ehlers said this after the game. You're not going to have a perfect game 82 games in a year, not even close. No team will. Doesn't mean you have to like the way you played. But if you can step up and make things happen, with the game on the line and, turn losses into wins, that'll help you big time in the long run. And God knows, Remis, it was a couple years ago where we've seen this exact situation happen the opposite way to the Winnipeg Jets a number of times. So, I think this is great for the team. And again, you're doing it without your number 1 center and Mark Scheifele. You're doing it without your captain, Blake Wheeler. So to be able to have some success for Ehlers in particular, because I think that if they had lost that game, they would have felt poorly about the way they played. And then we're talking about a half dozen games without a goal for Nikolai Ehlers. It becomes a bit more of a story. And it's not like he hasn't been playing well. It's not like he hasn't been generating scoring chances. But as much as we like to dive into analytics and say, oh, well, they're doing a bunch of these things right, it's a results-based business. And, you don't get any points for having a good Corsi. But having a good Corsi and all those things can lead to wins. But at a certain point, you need to have that ability to finish. Nikolai Ehlers certainly does have it. He hadn't been finishing so far this year. And coming out of that game, it is somewhat of a larceny of 2 points. I think the coach and most of the guys admitted that afterwards. But in the absence of Scheifele, to have Ehlers step up in that situation, not only to get a goal and feel good about himself, but have it happen at such an important time, I think a really, really good thing for the Winnipeg Jets. And you talk about this road trip going into California, it would have been really disappointing, I think, for this team after the 0-2-1 hole they dug in their first 3 games on the road to get those 2 wins at home, to get back to 500 in the standings, with the opportunity going into the Pacific against some of the lower teams in the division. I think a regulation loss would have really stung this team, and I think would have been a bit of a setback considering what they had before. Now, they're going to need to play better. There's no doubt about it. We'll talk about this with JP coming up in a few minutes. But, sometimes you get 2 points and you're very deserving of it. Sometimes you play great and you don't get 2 points. And in some ways, it sort of evens out over the course of the year. So we can say that the Jets stole one. We can, discuss some of the things that they didn't do very well or need to do better. But it's a much more pleasant conversation when a guy like Ehlers steps up and does what he did in the final 2 minutes of the game going forward. Just looking in here at some of the comments. Good teams win ugly games. Well, that was an ugly one. I would say for sure. let's see here. We've got, a lot of people just talking about party again. Party on forward when that fan took his helmet and wore it while drinking in the stands in Chicago. And Fritchie, the guy who took the helmet, looked so hilariously smashed. It still is one. I don't know. We all love memes now, and memes are very big on social media. I'm not sure if those memes, if they're, that would have been a great meme. I'm not sure if those were made back then, if they were as popular as they were, but yes, the drunk guy that stole Adam Party's helmet, certainly a bit of a legend. All right, let's break this game down with JP Vigier. Before we do that, I do want to thank Culligan Water for coming on board with Winnipeg Sports Talk. So great to have the family-owned water experts for 65 years in Winnipeg, hydrating us and Winnipeg and Southern Manitoba on Winnipeg Sports Talk. 1200 Sargent Avenue, 694-5180 is the number for the Culligan man. And in addition to celebrating 65 years being the water experts in Winnipeg, they've got everything for your home or your business when it comes to water softeners, filters, bottled water coolers, bottle-free coolers, whole home drinking water systems, not to mention commercial and industrial water products and solutions. Pop down and see them on Sargent Avenue for more, or check them out online at drinkculligan.com. I did pop by and saw the gang, the Maestro, the Godfather, Ninja, all the great nicknames of the dudes working at Manitoba Battery. Absolutely love that place. And they are they're powering this city as we get through the winter with the best prices on batteries anywhere, including all of the big box stores like Costco. $89.50 with the core exchange if you pop in to see them on Logan Avenue, or delivered same day anywhere within the city limits, $109.50 with a $15 recycling rebate when the core, the original battery, is returned. Find out more at manitobabattery.com on all that they can do. You can give them a call as well, 783-8787. To arrange that home delivery. And if you need things other than automotive batteries, whether it's for a wheelchair, a boat, a sled, with sled season coming up, they've got it all. It's one stop for your power needs, Manitoba Battery, over on Logan Avenue. And I got to give a shout out to our friends at Royal Sports. Royal's been with us from day one. Jets fans, Bomber fans, if you are needing an upgrade in the wardrobe now that we're going to get back to games, or maybe some warmer Bomber gear, Royal Sports is the place to do it, to be the greatest selection. It's always been my favorite store long before we even started working with the guys, because as a sports guy, they've got the best merchandise when it comes to our home teams as well as the rest of the world of sports. But it's far more than just the coolest and latest licensed merchandise. They are the hockey experts in town. Of course, soccer, basketball, baseball, all those things we do in the summer. But as we get into winter, hockey, and of course, they had the massive snowboard sale on the weekend, still with a ton of great deals over at Royal Sports. Pop down and see them, 750 Pembina Highway, connected to King's Skate, Snow, and Surf. All right, let's chop it up with JP Vigier, our good friend with the latest on the Winnipeg Jets. Vij, how are you, my friend? What's going on?
Good. Enjoying a little bit of rain outside. That's not the rain, because that means snow's on the way just shortly, I think.
Yeah, well, better it being the clear stuff than the white stuff. Well, although I guess Halloween is sort of the day. I mean, growing up here, I always think of Halloween as sort of the date. Usually you get to Halloween and it might be getting cold, but there's no snow. But there's not much time afterwards. So, heck, it's hockey season right now, and great to have the Winnipeg Jets back, as well as, just before we talk about the Jets, I mean, you're so involved in training young players and working with people involved in the minor hockey system. How are things going there, especially outside of the city? Are things slowly getting back to normal with kids being back on the ice and trying to make up for so much lost time, over the course of the past 18 months?
Kids, parents, and grandparents are fired up. We have seen an abundance of kids just wanting to get out there and play. Right? Like, just get out of my way. I'm going to play. We've missed it for a year and a half. So we have seen a lot of big smiles. We've actually seen a lot of well-focused kids coming out there, just having a blast. They leave with a sweat. They're smiling. They're excited to be there. It's what you want hockey to be all about, and it's fantastic. Now we got to keep it up because the kids are just starting to progress. We're about, I believe, 3 days away from the regular season starting for minor hockey, from the A1 level down. AA has already started. AAA has already started. So I think it's great. Get those playing games because that's what they love.
All right, Vij, let's talk about the Jets. I'm not sure how closely you watched the game last night, but I'll ask you just overall with the club. Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler have been such huge parts of this team. And, Paul Maurice has leaned on those guys in particular, probably more than anybody on the club, certainly amongst the forward group. You get the shocking news that Wheeler's on the COVID list, and then right before the home opener, no Mark Scheifele. But can tell you, especially when you look back at the lack of success the Jets had as of late, without Scheifele in the lineup, I think there was a legitimate amount of concern about a terrible start for the team because they were 0-2-1 going into that game. How impressed have you been with some of the other players stepping up in the absence of two of the most prominent players in the lineup to pull off 3 straight wins?
Yeah, very impressed, right? It starts up front with Kyle Connor, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Andrew Kopp, and Paul Stastny. I think Ehlers started yesterday, but those 4 have really taken an extra step, an extra leadership role, and what do you want to see? And it will be interesting now because they are playing well. There's hints of Blake Wheeler being on the mend or being right behind the group, getting ready to play here soon. How does Paul Maurice handle that? Does he just bring him in nice and gently because he hasn't played in 2 weeks? We've seen what quarantine do. Pierre-Luc went through quarantine last year, struggled to find him, get his legs underneath, get back to playing at the speed that he is. This is what we have this year with Pierre-Luc Dubois with a full summer train, mentally prepared. Where does Blake Wheeler fall in, and how does Paul Maurice bring him in? But you got to be impressed by the resolve of the Winnipeg Jets. They haven't quit. They could have hung their heads and said, oh my, we're without the 2 best players. But I think it proves to the Winnipeg Jets themselves and everyone around, even if they're missing a piece or 2, they're a team to be reckoned with.
Yeah, and I think so many of us sort of, the minute we heard that 55 was out in addition to Blake Wheeler, we were looking at Nikolai Ehlers, who'd had a great start in the first few games, but just hadn't been able to score. And then he didn't for a couple more games and was still generating a lot, but, wasn't putting on the red light. And, I think maybe the little bit of frustration was creeping into his game, although we didn't see that late last night when he stepped up big time in the third period. But you mentioned Pierre-Luc Dubois. There was no player, in my opinion, JP, that was under more of a microscope going into this season than Dubois. It comes with the territory when you're traded for an incredibly popular and successful player like Patrick Laine, not to mention Jack Roslovic. And the results weren't there last year. It was a struggle, and he'd be the first one to tell you that. He looks like a different player right now. He's having success in both ends and did have a couple bad giveaways last night, which led to goals in the third period. I wouldn't say that's characteristic of his overall play, but even after that, seeing on a huge back check to prevent a scoring chance and keeping the team in the game for Ehlers to do it. Let's start off with Dubois. And how different of a player he looks like to you, and what has he done? What is different about the Pierre-Luc Dubois wearing number 80 this season, the one we saw struggle at times last year in number 18?
Well, I think the Winnipeg Jets fans were expecting what we've seen this year, right? But let's not forget the rhythm that he never found last year with the team. A lot of pressure, like you said. You come in and take Patrick Laine's spot. You got to score 40 or 50 to be just as good now, right? And that's the mark. Right, so there's pressure. He gets injured. He's in quarantine. He's a month behind everyone. Mentally, the pressure is on him. This year, he's gotten rid of that pressure. He's off to a good start. He looks a little bit stronger physically. His skating's a little bit quicker. To me, the 2 things, he's stronger on the puck. He's able to hold the puck on longer and make plays in small areas. Sometimes it cost him. We saw a couple turnovers last night, like you said. But other than that, he's been very good at managing the puck and winning faceoffs, and his skating. He is up in the play. Last year, I felt he was always going in the wrong direction, playing with an Ehlers. Ehlers had been up the ice. Pierre-Luc's coming up behind. Turnover, they come back. So he's always chasing the play. This year, he's right there, playing along Kyle Connor, who's pretty quick, right? But they have been in chemistry, up the ice together, working together. So to me, those are the 2 biggest things. And that's just dedication to hard work in the offseason. He put in the time. I'm sure Paul Maurice was in his ear telling him, just relax. We need you to get faster and stronger, focus on those attributes, and then the rest will come because he knew you had the player that could do that.
Connor's been fascinating as well. I mean, we don't need to talk about his goal-scoring accolades. The guy puts up 30 in his sleep, and a big part of that has been the ice time, the opportunity that he's been given. He's been on the power play. He's been playing on that top line. He's been run out a lot. And I think a lot of people, frankly, would have said that a big part of that was playing with Mark Scheifele. Scheifele's out of the lineup, and Connor, in my opinion, has turned into a real driver. I'm not sure we ever would have called him a driver of that line before with Connor and Wheeler. He and Dubois together absolutely have been. And, you sort of alluded to it at the start from a coach's perspective. It does, open up some interesting doors that maybe weren't considered before when these other players return. If this keeps going and you keep having this chemistry from Dubois and Connor, if you are on the bench, are you keeping those guys together when everyone comes back and tries to see what else we can get going?
Oh, absolutely. I think you don't mess with something that's rolling, right? You try and integrate Scheifele and Wheeler into the lineup without disturbing what's rolling. If it's moving, Andrew Kopp to the side of those two and giving Scheifele, Wheeler, and Nikolai Ehlers maybe an opportunity to flourish. We've seen that line proceed. Is it maybe splitting up Scheifele and Wheeler at the start because they haven't played in a while? You don't want them on the same line in case they get caught for an extended shift, just to get their feet underneath them. Put Lowry with Stastny and Wheeler. Put Scheifele with Ehlers and maybe a Svechnikov or Vesalainen has been looking good. Lots of options, and I'll guarantee you Paul Maurice has got a lot of napkins on his desk right now. But first, those guys have to get there and I think get their feet wet. To me, Kyle Connor, what he showed is that he doesn't always need to be with the guy. He's been along Scheifele, along Wheeler. He's shown he can be the man. He can designate a line by himself. Now he needs to continue that when those come back, because that will be the key, right? It's all fine and dandy to do it for a bit, but there's an 82-game schedule that he's got to finish out here.
The other guy I want to ask you about is Ehlers, who, we mentioned he was somewhat snake bit early on. I mean, that goal, you scored a few at the National Hockey League. You ever have one like last night where you put in a space about that much over the shoulder?
No. I see the guy do it from the penalty box. No, I've been on the ice when they've done that to me. But that's what those goal scorers can do. You take those super skilled elite guys and they need one break. When they have that one break, the floodgates open. And you've seen he's been close. He's been bitten. He's been a little bit frustrated. But once he gets rolling, 2, 3, a 7, a 10-game point streak of 15, 20 points is not out of the question. Last night, the dam just broke. Where it goes, we'll see here in the next game coming up tomorrow. But I think those are those skilled guys. They just need a little window. Right? I remember Heatley and Kovalchuk. They might not score for 2 games. They had 5 chances. Then they get a double bouncer off 2 shin pads in the back of the net. They go on a 10-game heater, and you're like, that's all it takes, right? So I think it's just those guys, that's all they need, right? Just that little window, and the floodgates open because then they believe again.
JP Vigier is our guest on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. You can follow him on Twitter at JeanVigier11. I do want to ask you about the defense, but this is sort of a combo question because there are some newer players getting opportunities playing in the bottom 6. Harkins, of course, Svechnikov, who is up, playing up now with the injuries right now. But Riley Nash has been in there. Funny enough, not on the PK for some time when I think we thought he was going to be. Really, that's why he was here. The PK, the good news coming out of last night's game, as much as they didn't play very well, the PK was 3 for 3. I'm not sure how much that was the penalty kill or just a huge game from Connor Hellebuck. But while we talk about the good things that we've seen over the last little while, what do you make of the struggles the Jets have had on the penalty kill? And from in your opinion, what needs to get better to produce better results?
Well, to me, it's one of those combinations. Once the snowball starts to roll down the hill, to stop that snowball from going becomes very difficult. And that's where the Jets are. They're second guessing themselves. And unfortunately, I've been there. I think we had a stretch when I played that 10 games in a row, we gave up a PP goal, and you can't buy a break. You block a shot, it goes right to their guy. Goalie's not in the way, he's got an empty net, right? You're doing all the right things. So to me, those things will pay off, just like they did for Nikolai Ehlers yesterday. But I think they've added pieces to the pound kill. First, deep pairings are a little bit different. So the timing, the chemistry, the ins and out of their routes in the zone. Forwards, a little bit tweaked, maybe a little bit thinking. Okay, have a new partner. It's not Kopp and Lowry. They're kind of adjusting those pieces. So the synchronity of the PK is a little bit off. And as soon as that is not on, there's gaps and there's lanes and there seems to be hit, and that's what's been happening. So I think it'll come. It just needs to be continued to work on. And unfortunately, they don't have a lot of practice time, right? It's right now a game every second day. They're going to have to fix it through video, grind it out. They have the players. Will Palmery start to adjust? We saw Stastny start doing some PK yesterday. That's a veteran guy who's done that, understands the routes. Maybe he pulls back from the young guys a little bit till they get their feet wet, get back into a rhythm, get back into a comfortable spot in the standings, then maybe start to introduce the young guys again. I'd like to see a little more Harkins. His speed, his work ethic is great out there. We've seen the salt and pepper out of him. Can he provide a little more? So I think the intricacies of, the Dylan Pionk, where their timing is when they're going in and out of lanes, so that's all. We basically have 3 new pairs of D back there, right? Those guys have not played together really. And you throw Beaulieu in there once in a while. It's difficult for the chemistry and the timing to be there. It's just something that they need to play, because even in exhibition, we really didn't see those groupings together all the time, one after the other.
Yeah, you mentioned Beaulieu. He's the new utility man of the Winnipeg Jets. We were just talking about, shades of Adam Party, playing up front, making things happen. Obviously, Beaulieu's in right now because of injury, because of the salary cap. I mean, they're playing all the guys that they can play right now, which is 7 and 11. And, hey, they've won games with it. But let's talk about these D pairings. And I guess first, we're half a dozen games in. What have been your first impressions of both Nate Schmidt and Brendan Dillon, the big off-season acquisitions by the Winnipeg Jets?
Yeah, they're starting to fill in seamlessly, right? At the start, there was a little bit of timing issues with Morrissey's and Schmidt, Dillon, and Pionk, where they were going to be, where their partner support, who's jumping, who's covering, where do we go, those kind of things. But you're starting to see that come nice and easy now. Pionk doesn't have to think. He's moving the puck quicker. Josh Morrissey's allowed to jump up the ice a little bit, right? Score some timely goals. Schmidt's been helping the offense from the back end. I think those guys have been real good, real solid, and they've been good. Beaulieu, just what you expect out of him, right? It's going to go. He's going to block a shot. He's going to take a hit. He's going to make a play. He's not going to be sexy or fancy, but he's going to give you what he's got. And those are the guys you win championships with, right? Sure, it's nice to have a bunch of skilled players, but who's going to do the grunt work and dig that ditch when you need to get out of a game 6, in a PK out of your bench, out of your game, get the guys going. He's one of the guys who stepped up quite often, and you got to love those guys because they don't get the accolades of the Scheifeleys and Wheelers and the Kyle Connor. But you look at the score sheet, he's got 5 block shots, 4 hits. He only played 9 minutes. That's a heck of a night.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, I think he was rewarded. And part of it was the team itself wasn't playing that well. And I think they were looking for a few other looks and maybe giving some ice time to guys that in the coach's mind deserved it. But at the end, it was 27 on the ice that was making the difference at the end. Hey, before we go, JP, fill everyone in on what you got going and how they can find out more on the JPV hockey academies.
Yeah, so we got camps going all winter long. We work with associations. We work with minor hockey teams. We help coaches develop. We do mentorship programs, one-on-one. We can cut video. We can spend all day on the ice with you because that's what we love to do. My website's vigierhockey.com. Come check it out. If you have questions, shoot me an email from there. Love to get in touch with people, and we talk hockey all day. When Huss doesn't call me, there's another guy who does. So we love hockey. It's what we do. It's what we are.
Hey, I tell you what, pal, and folks, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the Elite Hockey Training Services up at Vigier Hockey. Let's do this again soon. I always love having you on the program and appreciate your insight.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, guys. Talk soon.
There he is, JP Vigier, with us on Winnipeg Sports Talk, discussing the Jets through 6 games on the ice, and of course, last night's win over the Anaheim Ducks. We're going to stay with the Jets, get to Jeff Hamilton in just a second. Do want to thank Princess Auto for their support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. We'll be doing curling reports for Princess Auto, who are a huge supporter of curling in the province, as well as Canada-wide, and of course, proud sponsors of Team Mike McEwen and Team Jennifer Jones as they chase Olympic gold. Many of you, if you fix anything, if you've got projects, you know Princess Auto. It's the holy grail for people that like to work on things. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto, where they pride themselves on helping you create the ideas in your head and turn them into reality. Whether for your shop, worksite, or home, Princess Auto knows you love finding the right tools and equipment to help build or repair things yourself. You can pop over to any of the 2 locations in Winnipeg or shop 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. Man, tomorrow night's going to be great. A good night for a few little brown jugs, I would say. Maybe your local watering hole. We've got a great Thursday nighter. And then, of course, the Jets continue their road trip with another late West Coast game. You can have the great taste of 1919 at your local beer store, or you can pop by the Tap Room and Patio on William Avenue and grab it. And speaking of that, a great family event that you might want to bring the kids to at Little Brown Jug. It's spooky season, heading into the Halloween weekend. Friday, family pumpkin carving from 3 until 6, and then a Halloween movie from 9 to 11. Free candies provided. That's all at Little Brown Jug down on William Avenue. Hit them up online. You can order all the great taste of Little Brown Jug as well at littlebrownjug.ca, and check the events page for what's coming up, as well as to book your next gathering. And tell you what, Thursday night tomorrow, BP might be the place to be, watching both the football and the hockey game. Nowhere better to gather with friends. And check out by a bunch of new menu items as well at Boston Pizza, some old favorites and some new favorites as well. But you're going to have those Boston's wings, great pizzas, and those ice cold schooners, and the big game on the big screen. And many of the local Boston Pizzas have a really cool Jets promo for Jets games, where you pick a player, you've got a card. If that player scores, you get a prize for your table. Pop down to your local BP and check it out. All right, let's get to the Hammer, who's kind enough to join us from the road down in sunny Southern California. How's travels, Hammer?
Really good. I'm currently in the bowels of Honda Center. The Jets are going to practice one more time here in Anaheim before heading over to LA to take on the Kings tomorrow, of course. But it wasn't too long ago. I was sitting on a patio in Newport Beach enjoying a breakfast. So a little bit of two sides of the spectrum, but so far so good here in the Sunshine State.
Well, it's funny you mentioned two sides of the spectrum, because I think this conversation is going to have two sides to it too. I know once we get talking about the Blackhawks thing, that'll probably take us through. Just before we go, thoughts on last night's game. Jets sort of pulling one out. Larceny, if you will, stealing 2 points. Nick Ehlers being the hero late in the game. Well, your thoughts on last night's win?
Yeah, lots to talk about in that last bit there, of course. I mean, if you think about just the game in general, I mean, the victory is a massive one. I mean, I think a lot of Jet fans out there looked at just the way they had been playing all game, not exactly their best performance. And I don't know if you would have predicted 2 goals in 20 seconds to sneak out that victory. It was especially prominent, I think, because Nikolai Ehlers got not just one, but both goals, his first and second goals of the season after, being a bit snake bitten through the first whatever amount of games, 6-7 games. But at the end of the day, it was a big victory. It was a big victory for the whole team. It was also a big victory for Connor Hellebuyck, who I think gave them an opportunity to win all games. So that was another added part to it. And I thought Paul Maurice's comments after the game were pretty bang on, in the sense that, it's hockey. Hockey's a crazy game. If you look at some of the games, even for the Jets this season, with the whole Kyle Connor going offside, and then losing that game, in dramatic fashion at the end. Sometimes it goes against you and it hurts, and sometimes it goes in your favor, as we saw last night. And the Jets certainly aren't looking at that one as their best effort, but they'll take it every day of the week, and it gives them a good boost here as they continue through the stretch here this week. Yeah,
it certainly ain't the blueprint, but 2 points is 2 points. And you mentioned the boost they have. I mean, I think, playing the way they did, if they lost in regulation and you move on to LA, you're sort of already making up for lost opportunities with this schedule on the West Coast. And, certainly I think they'll know, and you'll see at practice today, and I'm sure the coach will mention, they do need to be better to win these games going forward. But they do have a bit of momentum, and of course, it's all happening in the absence of both Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler. And I think there's some major positives that are coming for individual players right now, making the most of their opportunities, as well as the potential it has to maybe change the way this team looks going forward. I see Jamie Thomas has tweeted out that Blake Wheeler's cleared COVID protocol. What do we know about the captain, when he might return to the team, when can he be on the ice, and when we might see him back in the lineup?
Well, I'm hearing that he's back on. Yeah, as you mentioned, Jamie tweeted that. I think he's going to be on the ice today. So I think he's going to be back. I mean, whether or not he's going to play tomorrow against the Kings, I'm not 100% sure about that. I mean, he has been off the ice for 10 days. And, I don't know how much fitness, he's been able to do in that time. We all know that, it takes a bit of time to get to hockey fitness that, compared to, if you were riding the bike, even if you rode the bike a few hours a day, you're not going to be in that same kind of fitness level required to play hockey. So, but we also know Blake Wheeler has played through a lot. So, would a brief layoff be an issue for him? Probably not. I'm sure he'll advocate to be on the ice or rather to play in tomorrow's game. But I just think it's a bit of a big ask. I think, as you mentioned, it's not like the Jets are drowning without him at the moment. 3 straight victories with Blake and Mark Scheifele out of the lineup. So I think you have a little bit of, or rather less urgency to put him in the lineup if you don't have to, and give him that extra day. Maybe he feels good enough to play against San Jose. But as you mentioned, a lot of opportunities for guys. Evgeny Svechnikov is one guy that certainly pops out, and he also happens to be on a top line on that right wing slot. So that is Blake Wheeler's position. They different centerman, but Blake has had chemistry with Pierre-Luc Dubois, so it wouldn't surprise me if he was slid in there. But I think if you look at a guy like Svechnikov, or you look at a guy like Jansen Harkins, both of whom have taken full advantage of these added ice time, added minutes, and I think it makes for some interesting decisions here as we see 2 key players, obviously Wheeler first, and then Mark Scheifele re-enter the roster.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And the first thing is that Connor and Dubois have been so successful together. I don't think you break those guys up. And if that's the case, maybe you do put Wheeler on that line, because he certainly can hold his own, and I think would bring more than a couple of those other players that you mentioned. What it does mean, though, is that Mark Scheifele comes back to the lineup, and his 2 former wingers are now playing with Pierre-Luc Dubois, which opens up a bunch of possibilities. We'll get to those in the coming days when Scheifele comes back. But of course, Jeff, I used the comment "stain on the game" a number of times yesterday, and of course that was the title of your 3+ years of research into the Graham James, the horrific Graham James tragedy that continued in a number of spots as he worked his way as a predator through the hockey world. We've talked about this before in the summer when a number of these reports came out. But let's first off, your take and thoughts on what you saw in that report yesterday about what happened with the Chicago Blackhawks in 2010.
Yeah, I think like a lot of people out there, regardless of where you fall in, the opinion of what the fallout should be, particularly here at, in Winnipeg, I think we can all agree that the details are gruesome. They're, sad, certainly unfortunate. There's lots of, a lot of adjectives that you can use to describe, many different layers of it. There's so many layers to this, from the meeting to decision-making on a number of different levels, from, allowing, Brad Aldrich to stick around for the weeks they did, to let him quietly resign. I mean, there's just so many things. If you go through that 107-page report, that there's some things in there that are horrible, but just not as horrible as all the other things that have been reported. So it's a really, it's a breakdown of epic proportions when it comes to handling these things. The thing that I get left with here is I don't understand the Chicago Blackhawks thinking that going to the police was somehow going to make them look bad. This is a classic case of, have your cake and eat it too, where, you want to enjoy the good feelings of a championship, and you have that right to, winning the Stanley Cup is a very, obviously an incredible accomplishment for any, organization. But I think, and I know things change over years, even 5 years ago when it comes to sexual assault, 10 years ago, and obviously decades before that, I think you would have been applauded. I think if you go to the police, give it to the people who should handle this. And, I'm not trying to make light of the position here or trying to, whatever, but it's a video coach. Like, to me, it's obviously it's serious allegations. It shouldn't matter if it's a video coach or if it's the president or the head coach or whatever. It's not my point. It's just when you look at the facts of this case, you can't help but to be, shake your head and wonder, what the heck were they thinking? And how did they not think that this was eventually going to come back to bite them? That's the thing that I don't understand. And I think is unforgivable here is that, you make this decision to, essentially, I mentioned this, and this is, detailed a lot in my series, this whole Greyhound therapy situation where you essentially let a guy you find out these serious allegations, they have merit to them. And rather than doing, the right thing and going to authorities and letting the right people handle these situations, you don't want to deal with it. So you let them quietly leave and they go somewhere else. And so you ultimately make that decision, and then you have to live with it. And then it becomes a bit of a ticking time bomb because, like what happens a year down the road, 2 years down the road, 3, 4, whatever years down the road to today? Are you Googling his name? Are you wondering where he is? I mean, these aren't like hearsay things. These are serious allegations. And it's just, like I said, it's just a colossal breakdown of communication, and just, a stain on an organization that for years was viewed as the banner organization with their, multiple Stanley Cups. And it's just, all that legacy has just been torn down because of a bad decision or a series of decisions, made 10 years ago.
I echoed that. And I mean, it was a really kind of crazy show yesterday because, I was on the air starting at 1. This was released at that point, and about 40 minutes into the show, a lot of these details were coming out, both in relation to the meeting, which included Kevin Cheveldayoff, as well as a number of these things. And what stood out to me, and I'll echo what you just said, Joel Quenneville, the head coach, saying, this isn't something we can deal with right now. It's a distraction. We've got to, and I said, like, what are they, like, you're trying to tell me that this team isn't going to win the cup because this predator that you've got within your midst is going to leave? I find that hard to believe. And the lack of vision, the lack of leadership amongst everybody there is appalling. And, the effect on the victim afterwards, having to be around that individual for the time through the celebration and the way that they let him go, it goes right up to the top. And even Stan Bowman said yesterday, and I guess he is sort of passing the buck to, as often happens, you find out something, you put it up the corporate ladder, you give it to the people. All right, we're handling it. And, a lot of people go, well, I've done my thing, and then you move on and do it. But this was in their midst the entire time, which I think is one of the things that so many people have a hard time wrapping their head around, especially knowing that the victim was right there in the midst. And, it's something that I don't think, it'll never be explained. It'll never be. And I'm sure there's a huge amount of regret on the part of everyone that was involved in that, looking back now. And the one thing that I said, Jeff, and you're the perfect person to ask this, and I think I said this to you in the summer when the details came out first, but I'm like, this is 2010. We're not talking about the 80s, or we're not talking about the 90s. And I realize society's changed quite a bit in the last 10 years for sure. But this isn't ancient history. This is relatively recent. If this can happen with the guy in a position of power to an NHL player, or albeit a black ace, a young player with hopes to do it, if it can happen at that level, what does it say about what is still possible for these predators without, never mind, these guys are men, for kids in junior hockey, where so many of the coaches have so much power about the direction that these young men will be able to follow their dreams, never mind getting down to younger people in mind. And again, we talk about hockey because this is a hockey story, but we'd be naive to think that this is just a hockey thing. This is sports and this is society in general, although I think the hockey world has a major reckoning coming that this is a part of that, frankly, you've been working on for a number of years.
Yeah, to suggest it's the tip of the iceberg, is, I don't want to say it's hyperbolic or not hyperbolic, but the reality is you're right, Huss. If it can happen at the NHL level, it can happen anywhere, and it is happening. And you want to turn the page back decades ago. The Graham James thing is one thing. It's probably one of the biggest examples. But we also saw in junior hockey and recently the guy out of Saskatchewan who was, essentially sexting a 19-year-old last year. So, these things, the thing I think is lost on a lot of people, and we've talked about this in detail on the show, and I've certainly written about it, is just the ability to do it, the mental manipulation. Because I still get, whenever these things pop out, whether or not you want to look at the NHL level and how it happened, or just look at the last, X amount of years and how many stories have come out about abuse, sexual and otherwise, in the sport, particularly hockey. Yes, it's not just a hockey problem but it's still a hockey problem. And you know, when you can talk about hockey exclusively and then talk about a different sector, whether it be education, you know, these things happen in teachers, they happen in positions of power. That's the point. And to your point, Huss, is there's a lot of power and authority that comes in this game. Whether it's at the junior level, whether it's everyone chasing, you know, players chasing the dream of you know, one day maybe playing in the NHL or even lesser levels. Hockey means a lot of people. It doesn't have to necessarily mean the NHL to fulfill a dream. So there is elements of that. I mean, to me, it's one of those things that, you know, I think it's a good thing that these stories have come out. Obviously, I think it's putting putting people in uncomfortable situations to talk about. I think there's certainly more conversations happening at home with parents. You know, I get, you know, particularly through the series, I got dozens and dozens of emails from parents who look back, you know, at their kids' sports careers or you know, and regret certain things that they may have seen or done or whatever. And I get messages from new parents who, you know, are having these conversations, you know, more directly with their kids and not leaving it up to organizations to kind of do, you know, a 15-minute or an hour-long session on these stuff. So, you know, there's a lot of good things that are coming from this. But the reality is as a society, we still have a hard time understanding, you know, particularly when it comes to hockey, particularly when it comes to, you know, males preying on other males, whether they're, you know, teenagers or young adults. And I really do think it becomes a hockey culture thing in that there's an ability. I mean, we, first of all, we don't give, you know, credit I use lightly here, but these predators have an ability to seek out these players, you know, to seek out people who have insecurities, who have those red flags of being easily manipulated. And the reality is, you know, you want to talk about hockey culture and why hockey is such a, you know, a prominent topic outside the fact that, you know, it's one of the most cherished games in our country, is that it does create a society of people who have been catered to their entire life, you know, from an early age. These people who make the National Hockey League, you know, don't just start playing hockey when they're 14, 15, 16 years old. They've been identified since they were 8. Parents are obsessed with hockey. You know, they want nothing more than to, you know, be on the coach's good side. You know, hockey parents are crazy. Go to any level of any, like literally any level, from A3 to AAA to junior, and crazy parents exist everywhere. So you can only imagine when the stakes are that high, when there's money involved and all these things, go listen to your coach, go do that. You know, it's interesting to me because this dawned on me years ago before I even started kind of getting into this fear of abuse in the sport, that, you know, players would always make the jump from junior where they're absolutely catered to, and, you know, every whim, their laundry, their meals, you know, you talk about billet families being like a second set of parents. That's because they literally do everything for these kids so they can focus strictly on hockey. And that extends to education, teachers, these student advisors. Like, hockey is first, school is second, and the rest is, you know, whatever. And so we're creating this culture of kids that when they do make it to this level, what's the first thing we hear from players when they're, you know, cracking a roster or making it, you know, to this level? It's learning how to be a pro. You know what that is? That's learning how to be a human being. That's learning how to do laundry, learning how to make your lunch. So
taking care of yourself.
When you take all these things into consideration, that kind of lack of social skills that these guys have make them prey for these kind of predators. And like I said, these predators are capable of identifying these red flags or these characteristics of these players and manipulating them. And, you know, I think I said this on at least one of the conversations we had. Far too often, or in these cases, you know, you don't understand what's happening to you until it's too late. Until a sexual move has been made on you and you don't know where it came from or how it happened, but now you're far too deep. You don't have the intellectual capacity to deal with it. And then you bring in the whole hockey culture of being tough, that, you know, worrying about, you know, homophobia, all these things that play into this fear and just, you know, I had someone describe it to me, you know, in my investigation as a Todd Holt, in fact, you know, a guy who, you know, has done a lot, you know, obviously was a victim of Graham James, but has done, you know, has, you know, gotten to a point in his life where he's now an advocate and is doing just incredible things when it comes to, you know, abuse in the sport and the game. And, you know, he described it to me as a psycho thriller. movies that you go to where you don't wrap your brain around it and you leave and going, holy smokes, how does that happen? That happens. There's definitely similarities to that in this sphere where you just don't understand. So, my point is, there's a lot of people who, we've made a lot of steps towards understanding abuse, to, getting rid of some of the stigmas that are attached to it and all that. But we still have a long way to go when it comes to understanding some of the deeper things that maybe we don't want to understand, or maybe we resist understanding, but need to fully understand the magnitude of what goes through these people's minds, what the effects are of the victims, the lasting effects, and ultimately the abuse, the true abuse that they go through in these kinds of instances.
Jeff Hamilton of the Winnipeg Free Press is with us live from Southern California. The Jets just about to get on the ice for a practice in the midst of this road trip. I'm glad we talked about that, because I don't want to make this all about the other guys that were in the meeting, because this is about the victims, and this is about making sure that this doesn't happen again and improving the culture, the surroundings of all of these young people that are put into positions of harm. But we do have to talk about Kevin Cheveldayoff. I'm going to read this if people didn't see. This was the statement that the team put out yesterday. Of course, he will be meeting with the commissioner, as will Joel Quenneville. I have shared everything I know about this matter as part of my participation in Jenner and Block's investigation. That is reflected in today's investigation report. Further, I look forward to my discussion with Commissioner Bettman at the soonest possible date to continue to cooperate fully with the NHL. I will reserve any further comment until after that conversation has been conducted. So I'll put that out there. That's what we've heard from the general manager. He will be speaking with the commish. But what do we learn? Is there a disconnect from what we heard from Kevin Cheveldayoff in the summer to what came out in yesterday's report, Jeff? And what do you make of the situation that the Jets general manager is in right now, going forward, heading into this meeting, and how precarious is his position as the leader of this hockey club?
Yeah, no, it's obviously a very interesting thing. I want to address one thing first, though, Huss, and it's and it's not like a defense or anything. It's just acknowledging, because I think context is necessary. My back and forth with Paul Maurice yesterday, for instance, people took exception that or drew the conclusion that I was blaming Paul Maurice for what happened in Chicago. That somehow he needs to answer for what Kevin Cheveldayoff did. Anyone who would have listened to the audio or seen it, I don't know if the Jets would post it. I don't think they would, but the reality is Paul Maurice is the spokesperson for the Winnipeg Jets. Mark Chipman doesn't talk. He never, he rarely, if ever, comes out and says anything. So he's not the guy. Kevin Cheveldayoff is not the guy either. He's not overly comfortable with the media. He only kind of talks when he kind of needs to, whether it be the start of seasons or breaks, and or if it's been a long time that he's talked. So a lot of the work when this came out early on, I made the calls to the Jets. I wanted to know what the process was. I wanted to know if there was going to be a statement being made. I wanted to know if Mark Chipman was going to be talking. I wanted to know if Kevin Cheveldayoff would be made available, and I couldn't get confirmation on anything. There may have been a statement coming out later. Mark Chipman wasn't going to be talking. So initial comments from the Winnipeg Jets falls on Paul Maurice. He got put in the line of fire. He needs to ask the question. I asked the question, said, this is a brief thing. You've been briefed on this. What can you say about, do you have a comment on behalf of the Winnipeg Jets? And Paul Maurice, who had talked to the organization already, was already briefed on what he was going to say, started talking about how, we don't have enough information. It just really fine, handled it perfectly. That's what he needs to do. So what's the next question? The next question for me is, what is Paul Maurice responsible for? And that's his own players. So to suggest this isn't going to be a distraction in the dressing room, I think that's a naive take. So, how do you not make, there's a lot of individuals, they're all hockey players, but they're also grown men and they have their own opinions about things. And it happened, let's remember here that the victims here are fellow players of the PA. So, there is a disconnect between management and players that is real. And so I thought Paul answered that question great as well. I think, I wouldn't say great, but answered it. I mean, I think he assumed too much quickly that there wouldn't be an issue, and maybe there won't be. But We'll see on that. And then the conversation was brought up to a broader conversation about hockey culture. And those people who think that Paul Maurice shouldn't be talking about hockey culture need to realize that there may not be a better person, a more informed person than Paul Maurice to literally talk about hockey culture. The guy became a head coach in the National Hockey League when he was 30-something years old. He's one of the youngest coaches here. He's been through all this. There's perhaps not a better equipped guy to make a comment. So then a question was asked about that. And unfortunately, tough situation, Paul made the comment that I don't think this happens more in hockey than any other aspect of life. And it goes back to our original comment. So when I said that I had spent 3 years, this wasn't my gotcha or aha moment. First of all, me and Paul Maurice have a good relationship. We have, there's a mutual respect there. We've had instances where we've butted heads before in the past, but it's been all good for the most part. So I can't sit there and have a coach who has been coaching this long come out and say it's not a hockey problem without going back and saying, well, you know what, it is a hockey problem, regardless if it happens in other society. And I made the comment about waxing poet because that is what Paul Maurice does. He knows how to read a room. He knows how to make comments. Like, he's done it a lot. And this isn't brand new. This investigation has been out forever. So if he hasn't done his research or talked about it, and he made the comment that he doesn't have 3 years of research, and that's fine. It takes about 3 hours of research online to realize what the statistics are. And so to me, I felt like it was an opportunity to kind of push back on that. It wasn't to push him or make him feel uncomfortable or to put blame on him. The reality is that he should be answering those questions, and the Jets put him in the line of fire to do so. Had they put out Mark Chipman, had they put out, Kevin Cheveldayoff, then we don't need to go to the coach. But unfortunately, it falls on him. But back to
you were doing your job on that. 100%. Absolutely, I thought you did it well. And to be honest, I'm with you. I don't think there's a better communicator that I've maybe ever seen when it comes to a head coach, and that is one of the things that Paul brings. But I did feel a little bit sorry for him because you're right. He was the guy that was out in the line of fire. It wasn't anyone else and he had to take those questions. But anyways, back to Chevy. With what we saw in the report, the statement, it's important to remember he's the assistant general manager. He's probably the low guy in the totem pole in that room. It goes all the way up to the chairman who says he's handling it. But is there a discrepancy in what was said in the summer regarding knowing of this to what came out yesterday? Because I think that if there's lying involved and he's involved in the cover up, that is the thing that will be that could lead to punishment or potentially demise.
So I made a mistake by tweeting out suggesting that it appears. I said it appears that he lied because I think when you looked at it, it was so complicated, so confusing. And that's on me not to go to Twitter and suggest something that ultimately is not true. Now, was he misleading? Absolutely. He didn't talk about a meeting that he was part of, that the allegations were fully discussed. He made it sound in his comment as if he kind of found out through the grapevine and it was just before he got let go and ultimately it wasn't his decision. I'll tell you this, the two statements that we've seen from Kevin Cheveldayoff, I'm confident that not a single word came out of his mouth. Those things are written by lawyers, and I don't necessarily disagree with it. When you look at things that are, with the courts, when you have a pending lawsuit, all these things, why would you come out and just say something? You need to be careful. So True North has its legal people. They have a lot of people that are on this. It was a clever comment. I remember reading the initial comment. It was like, and this is where I think the confusion was as far as like whether or not he was lying or not, was that he starts the comment by saying he had no knowledge of what happened, until he was told what happened weeks before it had. So like there was this weird kind of connection. And then, the follow-up statement, I don't know, I'm not here to necessarily say, is this a great statement or is this a bad statement? The whole looking forward to I don't know who would be looking forward to that meeting with Bettman, but, obviously that's showing a level of confidence that I think is lost here. The Jets, I think it's kind of obvious, are going off a narrative here that he didn't lie. They're focusing on him not lying instead of actually acknowledging what he knew and didn't do. Now, here's the thing. Because of my research into this, I actually have more empathy than the average person in those difficult situations. You're right. Kevin Cheveldayoff was not the president. He was not the next guy. He was one of the lower guys. If you want to take a hierarchy of the 7 guys in that room, he was on the lower rung. I don't buy the whole 9 months into the job. You're not 14 years old. You're an adult. So whether you're 9 months into the job, you're not new to hockey. You've been in hockey circles for decades at that point. Anyone who knows Kevin Cheveldayoff's history, he played for the Brandon Wheat Kings, went through junior. Like he's been in these hockey circles. He's been part of that culture forever. So it's not like he was new to the job and this was a tough situation. Of course, it was a tough situation for him. Do you want to go over your boss's head? Probably not. And it's pretty easy for people to come out and say, I would 100%, done something or said something, when in reality, far fewer people actually would have when put up in that situation. The problem is, and I liken it to this, is if, for instance, I tell you a secret that has, ramifications that if you knew about it, and didn't say something, you'd be in trouble, right? I've now put you in a situation. So the Blackhawks, fair or not, put every single one of those people in that meeting in a position. So, yes, are you the one who's going to bang your fist on the table and say, you know what, we got to do something when, your bosses are saying that they're going to handle it and whatever, yada, yada. 3 weeks went by afterwards, and this guy was hanging out with the team, including the victim that he assaulted, and then was gone. So you had 3 weeks. So I'm not saying you got to be knocking on the door, but you need to have some kind of courage. And if you don't have that courage at the time, you need to understand there are drastic consequences. So when I liken it to the idea of being told a secret, yeah, are you in the position to go over your boss's head? Maybe, maybe not. But they put you in that position. They now control your fate. You can control your own fate by doing the right thing. And I think that's ultimately what's going to come down here. We're in a society now where we're not forgiving with things, particularly around sexual assault. It'll be fascinating to see what happens with Kevin Cheveldayoff. It's not my position. As I've said on this show before, it doesn't really matter what Jeff Hamilton thinks when it comes to hockey decisions or who gets fired or who doesn't, or how the Jets should be playing or who should be on what line. Not my call. It falls on them. That's not a cop-out. But what I am saying is that it feels right now with the statement, with how the Jets are reacting, that they think this is just going to blow over. And that's not going to happen. I mean, ultimately, Kevin Cheveldayoff will have the luxury of being silent.
All right, everybody. Major apologies for that. I'm not sure whether we were hacked, attacked. This was not Remis's big toe or hitting anything. But obviously we do this remotely, and where the broadcast was coming from, an internet outage for the last few minutes. So and it really sucks that happened, because Hammer was. He's so passionate about this. He's done so much work on this. And I think his perspective on all of this that we'll read in the pages of the Winnipeg Free Press as he's working on it is going to be something that, he's a very important voice in all of this. Anyways, it really sucks that happened. And obviously I wanted to get him back to practice. We will revisit this. Jeff's going to be, he'll be a regular on this program as this story continues. But going forward, there is major questions to be had about, how True North handles things, about how Kevin Cheveldayoff handles things going forward. And to Jeff's point, which I think was sort of cut off once the internet was lost, there will be a meeting going forward. there'll be a decision. Whether that decision's already been made, I mean, I think it's safe to say that I think that if anyone at True North, going all the way up to Mark Chipman, had thought that Kevin Cheveldayoff hadn't been forthcoming with them from the get-go, he wouldn't be here right now. And Jeff's point about, all of these statements being made by lawyers, I think is 100% correct. I mean, there's litigation. It's a very serious matter. But what I think will end up being the most important thing about this is hearing from both Kevin Cheveldayoff and Mark Chipman at some point, because the situation with Paul Maurice, and Hammer's bang on, he is the spokesperson for the Winnipeg Jets. He's the person that speaks every day. And when a situation like this, if everybody else is not available to speak to it, someone will. And, Paul was the guy that was out there yesterday. And, Hammer is right. If you're talking about hockey culture, how things have changed, where things are at right now, there's nobody with more experience in the game than Paul Maurice. So, that was why that line of questioning went yesterday, because there wasn't anybody else to ask. It was important to do that. But Paul's going to be handling the hockey team going forward right now. Kevin Cheveldayoff will be meeting with Commissioner Gary Bettman. And at some point after that, we will hear from the general manager of the Winnipeg Jets. We'll find out what the future for him is with this organization, and we'll certainly hear from his superiors, probably all the way up to the top, on what this situation is as to, the future of Kevin Cheveldayoff going forward. But it's this story isn't going away anytime soon, and here in Winnipeg, it's a much bigger one because of the connection and the involvement in the meeting of Kevin Cheveldayoff, albeit in an assistant general manager's role. A lot of layers to this, so. We do, I just wanted to apologize for that. The timing of that could not have been worse. I'm not sure. Maybe we got hacked. But I'll tell you what, Jeff is going to be back again very soon on this, and we will certainly be speaking about it more and following it. Ken Wiebe will join us tomorrow on the program. We'll have Marat on the road with the club with more on this. And Jeff's always been very good to us, but I would suggest that you pay close attention to the Winnipeg Free Press over the next few days, as no one will be all over this more than the Hammer. All right, we are going to talk a little baseball for a minute. The World Series got going last night. Dean Millard's going to come up. Before we do that, do want to thank Not Auto Corp for their support of Winnipeg Sports Talk since day number one. If you're in the market for a new vehicle, why not get into the car of your dreams at a great price with the help of the Not team? Pop down and see them at Waverly and McGillivray and all of the great vehicles they've got on site. Or if you're looking for something in particular, they will help you find it. You can find out more at not.ca online. And of course, you can also find out about the Winnipeg Car Lab, which is open now, doing modifications, tinting, wraps, and more, all there at Not Auto Corp. Our friends at Nick and Nicky DQs are still rolling. The great taste of those blizzards are good 12 months a year. Of course, they've got amazing food options as well, with the burgers, fries, chicken fingers, and more. And if you're having an event, the DQ cake will make you the hero. Whether you're on the road or having people over, hit them up on Instagram at DQ Manitoba. Nick and Nicky will get you set up for your next party. And of course, you can customize it and have it ready for you to pick up at any of the 4 Nick and Nicky DQs: Niverville, Northgate, Polo Park, and DQ St. Anne's. And it'll be a week. Bombers on the bye week. We'll be back at IG Field on the 6th of November. It'll be getting a little chillier. I know there'll be some CC being poured around and the great taste of Canadian Club being enjoyed by Bomber fans. And we'll probably need a little bit more to keep warm on December 5th. Of course, Canadian Club is the official sponsor of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And we are ready for the West Final. Tickets are on sale now. Get them if you haven't already. Let's pack that place and hopefully see a big Bomber win with the blue and gold heading to Hamilton to defend the cup. You can get the great taste of Canadian Club at IG Field at all events, and of course at your local Manitoba liquor marts. All right, we will transition to a little bit of baseball, and this is fun. I mean, you all know that Remis and I spent a lot of time talking about fantasy. It's fantasy football season right now. We're just getting into hockey, but baseball probably biggest fantasy sport of all. And we're going to talk World Series, but we're also going to talk about a groundbreaking league when it comes to fantasy sports, kind of along the lines of what we were talking about with our pal Andy McNamara heading to football season. Let's welcome in Dean Millard from the Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball. Dean, what's going on? Great to have you on the program.
Thanks a lot, man. I am honored to be here. I'm excited that the World Series game will be less than 4 hours tonight, and really excited about our franchise auctions in November for Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball.
Yeah, I'll ask you about the Ultimate Fantasy League before we go, but let's talk about last night. First of all, how surprised were you of the two final teams standing? I mean, the Astros and the Braves. I know there's a lot of Jays fans that are a little bent right now because, of course, they finished just short of getting into the playoffs, and now we're seeing a team with their former general manager that won 88 games, 3 less than the Jays, now 3 wins away from holding the title.
Yeah, it's like this Atlanta Braves team, they got into the playoffs with the least amount of wins, but that, they're still a dominant team, as you saw last night. I still think Houston will eventually win this World Series. Losing Charlie Morton is such a huge blow to the Braves. He kind of did the broken leg. We always hear the story about the hockey players that go
Bobby
out
Vaughn. He's the Bobby Vaughn.
Yeah.
Can we just talk about this right now? Because
sure.
we had a hockey game going on. I was kind of going back and forth, and it wasn't until afterwards I'm realizing that Charlie Morton pitched more than an inning and got out of it on a broken freaking leg.
Unbelievable. It takes just a rocket shot over 100 miles an hour off the leg, and they were kind of looking at him in the dugout after because he took the shot off the leg, finished the inning, and then he's got his coat on. They thought, wow, Charlie Morton, maybe something did happen with the leg. And he comes back out, pitches just a little bit, and he's like, yeah, this is silly. They take him out. And then later on in the game, they're like, yeah, broken leg, which is, I know some people look at baseball players and they're like, oh, that guy can't play because he has a broken fingernail. They don't realize how important the fingernail or the grip is. And sometimes people look at baseball players as being some of the soft guys when it comes to the major league sports. But remember, these guys are playing at least 5, sometimes 7 days, 13 days, and 162 games in a season. So they're thoroughbreds. They are definitely thoroughbreds. And for a guy to pitch with a broken leg, that puts him into that legendary injury status, like, Byron Leftwich being helped to the offensive line to throw and different things. It's the hockey player going out there and scoring a goal with a broken leg. It's legendary.
Yeah, well, they better win so we can stop talking about Kirk Chilling and his damn bloody sock and give Charlie Morton the respect that he deserves. But overall in this matchup, the Astros were a slight favorite, but I'll tell you what, the Braves with my guy, former Royal home run leader, he was eclipsed by the great Salvador Perez this year, George Soler, getting off to a great start right off the bat in the inning. And, sort of you could feel this belief building in the Braves team that, to be honest, I think they had coming in after taking out the Dodgers in the NLCS. We'll talk about the Braves in a the Astros in a second, but I mean, just your thought on this Braves team and the fact that they don't have Charlie Morton for the rest of this series.
Yeah, they still have a better pitching staff, in my opinion. Losing Morton is going to be tough. The Jorge Soler is so crazy. I mean, this is a guy who hit 48 home runs, and he's your leadoff hitter in the World Series, and he leads off with a home run. It just shows you that different minds are approaching baseball, and we see it in so many different ways. Not just the analytics, but the decisions of where to hit a guy. We used to see number 1 guy was speedy, get on base. Number 2 guy might bunt him over. Now it's, you got Trey Turner, batting champion, hitting number 2 spot, when I look at the LA Dodgers. But the Braves team are a team of destiny right now. I honestly still think the Astros will take this, but they're doing it without one of the top 5 players in Major League Baseball, and Ronald Acuna Jr. They're really coming together. What Jock Peterson is doing for this Atlanta Braves team is incredible. They have Canadian content with Freddie Freeman, and this is a guy in Freddie Freeman who could leave, just like Carlos Correa, in the offseason and become a free agent. So the Braves are a team that is considered the underdog when you look at the statistics, but their offense proved last night, and that's how they beat the Astros. The Astros don't have as good starting pitching. You get to the starter. He was out, and Framber Valdez had one of the worst outings of his career. That's how the Braves will beat them, because the Astros have a great bullpen, but it's been taxed in the playoffs.
Yeah, they're going to the bullpen in the third inning every game. And you want to talk about taxing, it certainly does. We mentioned the hitting, and people that I think were leaning Astros going in were overlooking some of the pitching and just saying, hey, look at the bats that they have. But then we talk about the Atlanta pitching and going into the bullpen, and Altuve's 0 for 5, Bregman's 0 for 4, Correa's 0 for 1, did get a walk. Those guys, they simply can't win if those guys aren't being as productive as the Braves hitters, if not far more.
Yeah, the Astros lineup is so deep, but once those, the reason it's successful is because those other guys sort of set the table for them, and everybody feeds off of it. If those guys aren't going, then it's tougher for the bottom order, which is still pretty impressive. I mean, the Astros have guys that would be number 2, 3 hitters hitting in the 6th, 7th hole. They're they've built their team just like the Braves in a terrific way. And you mentioned the former Jays man Alex Anthopoulos doing such a good job with the Braves lineup and how they've built that. But this is an Astros lineup that I think could snap out at any second. I would be concerned at any moment pitching to this. Even with Max Fried, the ace on the hill tonight for Atlanta, I would be concerned anytime pretty much an Astro steps up to the plate, because the potential is there for the game to change with one swing of the bat. And I think Atlanta showed last night that they can hit the long ball. But I think that sorry, I just got to stop this call. I think that the Braves showed that, but I honestly, if I'm any Atlanta fan, I'm thinking that the Braves or the Astros can bust out at any moment and hit home runs, pile up people on the base, and change the game.
Well, just before we move to the fantasy side of things, fill us in. You mentioned Max Fried on the hill tonight, Urquidy for the Astros. What do you make of this pitching matchup, and how urgent is it for the Astros to get one tonight before the Braves are just a steamroller and have 4 wins?
Yeah, this is huge, because the environment in Atlanta, the fans, the Astros do not want to go in there down 2-0, especially you just gave up home field advantage in the last at bat. I think that this is going to be a tough one. Like, Max Fried is the ace of the Atlanta Braves. He is a stud. I do not have as much confidence in Urquidy, but I go back to the Braves-Dodgers series when the Braves went with a bullpen game and the Dodgers had the only 20-game winner on the hill, Julio Urias. The Braves won that game. They found a way to do it. So the Astros could do the same thing. This should be a 2-0 lead for the Atlanta Braves. Max Fried is dominant, but going back to that Astros lineup, they can make any Cy Young favorite look ordinary. But this is as good a chance. I'll say this, even if Atlanta wins tonight, I still think Houston has the power to come back and win this series down 2-0.
Dean Millard's with us, talking World Series and talking the Ultimate Fantasy Baseball, Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball, the UFLB. Now, regular listeners and viewers know my good friend Andy Mack has been very involved in the football side of things. And from what I gather, this is sort of the next generation of this for the baseball format. As simple as possible, fill us in. What is the UFLB?
It's what you see from Major League Baseball is what you will see from Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball in fantasy format on the blockchain. That's the coolest thing about this. We are the first to put fantasy sports on the blockchain, and we have pretty much everything that Major League Baseball has. We have 30 franchises, which we will auction off November 5th to 7th. There will be 26 player rosters, so it means a 26-round draft. Not as deep as that 53-round draft that the football
insane
guys went through with Andy, but still 26 rounds. If you're a Major League Baseball player, you're going to be on a roster in this format. We'll have a 40-man list. Eventually, we'll have minor leagues. So when you think about running a Major League Baseball team, this is as close as you will get because you have to make all the same decisions. You have to know when your players have options to be able to send back and forth to your protected list, which will eventually be the minor leagues. There are so many cool things and unique things. And why do we get into fantasy? Because we want to feel like what it is like to be in the chair, whether that's the owner chair or the GM chair. And this gets you closer to the game than anything. Ian Kinsler, former Texas Ranger, now with the Padres organization in the front office, he said it best as our ambassador. He's a guy who has been to 3 World Series and he's won one, and now he's helping to try to build one with the Padres. It's as close to the real thing as you will get, as he said. So if you want to be in the owner's chair or the GM chair, this is the league that you want to get yourself into.
What about athlete involvement and the NFTs? I mean, a lot of people just hear NFTs and they don't really know what it is, but it has been interesting, and I've been paying more attention to the football side of things. Of course, my guy Dustin Nielsen is one of the GMs in the league working. I mean, these are big operations these teams had, and frankly, there's big money involved in it as well. But it was interesting reading over what you said. There's athlete involvement where they kind of create the NFT. Well, what is that? How does it work?
Yeah, so athletes sign up with us. Ian Kinsler, as mentioned, is our ambassador in baseball, and so he is signed up. Chris Carter's NFT will be very shortly. People will be able to purchase that on our NFT marketplace. Michael Vick is part of the program. So athletes sign up. We create their NFT for them, and you've seen NFTs, some of the different sports with their highlights. Our NFTs are not only are they going to be the best looking NFTs out there, but they have a utility. You actually have a use for them other than just looking at how cool they are, because they participate in fantasy gameplay, and the players themselves actually get rewarded for their fantasy stats. So we have guys like Chris Carter, Michael Vick, and Ian Kinsler. They'll be in our Legends League, which Andy just auctioned off 16 of those for football, where we're bringing retired players back to the game, and they will get a cut of their fantasy stats. Same thing will happen with everyday players. For an example, if Bo Bichette was to sign up with us, Bo Bichette would not only have his NFT created, but then Bo Bichette would be into our fantasy gameplay. And like every other player, just like every other fantasy website uses those stats, but Bo Bichette would get a cut of the actual prize pool that he contributes to. And our prize pools, we're thinking, are going to be very large. Football, Andy's league that started up was over $200,000, and it's a progressive pool that grows. So the bigger the prize pool, the bigger the cut for everybody. And then the actual athlete involvement. I mean, I had a conversation with Ryan Malone, who's an ambassador in our hockey league and a former NHLer and Olympian. And he said they would sit on the plane in Tampa playing cards and talk about, when are we going to get paid for fantasy? Now they can. It's a serious no-brainer for athletes of all sports, hockey, basketball, football, baseball, and many more to come, to get involved with this. And as a participant, you get that connection to the athlete because they are involved. So the more athletes we get involved, the better off the platform is. And athletes actually getting rewarded for their fantasy stats.
Hey,
pretty next level.
One other thing, and I mean, my brain melted talking to. I was actually with Dusty. He was here in Winnipeg the night of, I guess it was day 2 of the draft, of the rookie draft. So we're at a Boston Pizza having a couple beers, and he's banging away all these bids trying to get guys. And I'm just like, I mean, I've done fantasy sports for over 25 years. And I was like, I cannot believe how in-depth this is. Now, of course, it's football 53, but baseball's always been, it started fantasy, really, with Roto back in the day. Right. It is the preeminent numbers sport. So I would imagine that this, in a lot of ways, is the perfect, confluence between traditional fantasy and sort of where technology is taking us. But you mentioned, I mean, you've got owners, you've got GMs, there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of people involved. A big part of it is scouting, because this isn't just about a one-year thing. This will be ongoing. A quick word on the scouting platform and how all that works. And people can maybe be involved as scouts as well if they're real baseball hardos.
Yeah, exactly. So just quickly, franchise ownership, if you wanted to get in, we'll be auctioning off 30 franchises. The minimum bid for that is $2,500 US. And that might sound a lot for fantasy franchises, but in our hockey league, we've had expansion franchise went for 10 grand US. We've had sales of 35,000, 51,000, and two in the 70,000. So there is an investment for a lot of people. So that's on the franchise side. You can get in a minimum bid of 2,500, but scouting, as you mentioned, that's really easy. You can sign up for a scout for $25. And on our platform, when you sign up as a scout, you not only get to sign up as a baseball scout, let's say, but you can scout basketball, hockey, football. You go to a junior game, you see a player that's not listed, you go home, you can list that player for $20, open market. Otherwise, scouts are looking into 3 years ahead. We're always looking 3 years ahead. So scouts in 2022 will be bidding on players that are not eligible for their draft until 2025. So it's a very deep process. It's a very thorough process, but it can also be a very rewarding process. And, I own a franchise in hockey. I'm very, very lucky to have Craig Button as my VP of scouting. He also is the president of scouting for my wife's scouting agency that she owns. And so we're very lucky on the hockey side to have that. But you can get in and scout any sport. We have over 100 scouts. Thousands of players have been listed on our platform. And it's an opportunity for people to do real world scouting. You go to a football game in Texas, Friday Night Lights, and you see a kid that you like that's not listed, you throw him down. Now you follow that kid's career. He gets auctioned off in the UFAFL. That scout gets paid off. Same thing in baseball, same thing in basketball. It's really wild. And even we have Ultimate Fantasy World Juniors launching this year. So scouts are going to see their players in the World Juniors. Like, we are auctioning off only 10 World Junior teams because that's all there are in the tournament. And you will own that country forever. You get to name your own country. So this really is something for everybody at almost any level. And we'll continue to build. In baseball, we'll have minor leagues. We'll have the Legends Leagues. In hockey, we're looking at CHL. We'll look at NCAA in all sports. Really, if there's a sport out there with stats, we can put it on the blockchain and people can participate. So I can't wait. We might have to get somebody from the World Juniors on to talk to you guys about that later on, because that's pretty cool as well. But that's the scouting thing. You can get in for $25. You can spend big on players. Trevor Lawrence went for, I think, $9,500 or $8,500, or you can just go in the open market. So just like you would build a team in baseball or hockey, different strategies. You want a top 5 pick, you got to bid. You got to be in the bid top 5, because where you finish in the bidding determines where you will draft, or you can draft from the back of the bus. I know a lot of people that think it's a great challenge to build a championship team with the last pick in the draft.
Yeah, well, no, that is true. Harder than the last pick than maybe the first one. Tell you what, I'm signing up right now. I want my own competitive eating team, and I'm getting Joey Chestnut right off the bat for my franchise player. Dean, hey, we got to run, but quickly, where can people find out more information about this? You mentioned next week is the baseball draft. Just fill people in on where they can go online to learn more about what you guys have going on.
You betcha. You can email info@uffsports.com, or you can head to www.uffsports.com. With those franchise auctions next weekend, everybody has to be registered to bid. They'll get their own unique code to enter the franchise auction. So if they are interested, just info@uffsports.com. They can send me an email and we will get all the information to them. And thanks very much, guys. I brought out my old jersey. This is the amateurs. We used to, when I lived in Winnipeg in the 90s, Jets 1.0. This was the team we played on, and we would always end up at the Charlie after for patio pops.
Yes, the Charlie's a gas station now.
Oh my goodness!
I grind my Charleswood friends about the demise of their bar. Some other good spots there now. Hey, Dean, you be well. We'll talk to you again soon sometime.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much. There's Dean Millard with Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball. Wow. I mean, I love these conversations. I mean, Andy's a good friend. So, and, we all know that Andy Mack comes with like an energy level around, basically something like, a nuclear reactor every time he comes on the program. But man, seeing the inside when Dustin's been working on this football team, can't imagine what it's going to be like for baseball. I'll be interested to find out more about the hockey side of things as well. But anyways, great to have Dean on. Looking forward to this game tonight. Let's get Remis in here for a second. Reem, I know you were, like me, more preoccupied with the hockey game last night. But I'll tell you what, I was quite interested to see the start that the Braves had. And, I know Charlie Morton with a legendary performance to start the game, getting those guys out on a broken leg. The team finishes the job. This is a huge game for the Astros tonight because to head to Atlanta down 2, I'm not sure that series gets back to H-Town.
Yes. I'll be honest, like when the Astros and the Red Sox were in the ALCS, I was like, I really don't care. I hate both of these teams. I'm happy for the Braves, happy for Alex Anthopoulos. The Charlie Morton thing, pretty cool. I was watching hockey last night. I really wasn't. I had to take care of some other stuff. Wasn't paying as much attention. But as we go on, if we have close years, my favorite thing is when the team wins and it shows the individual shot of all the players celebrating at the final out. Assuming they're they're on the field, which I guess usually they are. But we'll see what happens. I'm hoping for the Braves. It's pretty impressive what they've done this year. Ronald Acuna, one of the most electric young players in baseball, gets hurt. They make a bunch of different trades. Eddie Rosario being one of the guys they brought in after, who was on fire in the last series. The Braves have been building this for a while. They lost to the Dodgers last year, and they actually have former Dodger Jock Peterson on their team as well. So we'll see how it goes. But I think we're all hoping for Houston to lose, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, good.
I think that kind of goes without saying. Let's get to the cool bet lines for today. And again, I don't want to jinx myself. I kind of thought that I may have done that going into yesterday's lock shop because of what a great football weekend we had. But the heater continues. 2 bets last night. One, I gave out on the lock shop, Winnipeg, Minnesota, and we said, why don't we do a 3-gamer with the Kraken? The Kraken in Minnesota came through. It was the heroics by Nikolai Ehlers that got it done. But just to give you an idea about how well things are going, the one other wager that I made was a bit of a hunch. Nikolai Ehlers over 1.5 goals. Didn't think that it was cash, 9-1. And when I saw Joe Piscucci's tweet later on last night after the game that the NHL had changed the last goal to Ehlers, I almost lost it. So anyways, things are good. You should be checking out the lock shop if you like to bet. If you do like to bet, do it at Cool Bet. We'll hook you up with a double on your initial bonus, a 100% bonus up to $200 if you use the promo code WST. Now, while we're at it, talking about the World Series tonight, as I said, Max Fried on the hill. The Astros -106. Braves -106. Astros -110. Basically a pick 'em. And looking at the World Series winner right now, Braves went into last night +122 underdogs after winning game number 1. They're -161. If you still do like Houston and think that they can get this job done, probably some great value on the Astros at +145 to win the series. As far as the NHL goes, we have 5 games tonight in the National Hockey League, starting off with the Bruins and the Panthers. And we'll talk Panthers in just a second. -133 for the Panthers, looking to go 6-0. Boston +113. Capitals, huge favorites over Detroit, -122. You like them to win by 2, you can get plus money at +117. The Leafs, the struggling Leafs going in to take on the Blackhawks, who are in disarray. Someone's got to win this game. Leafs -204 favorites on the road. Blackhawks +172 to get their first win of the season. And there was VGK last night winning in Colorado. Big win for Vegas, who's had a tough start. They're underdogs again, +134 on the road, playing back-to-backs. They're taking on the Dallas Stars. And the game that I'm going to be watching tonight, looking forward to seeing if the Oilers can get to 6-0. Oilers a big -185 favorite, taking on the visiting Philadelphia Flyers +157. That a late game beginning at 9 p.m., 8 p.m. local. I think that might be a national game, maybe a TNT game, so they can get a little bit of Connor McDavid. And a quick update on the line for tomorrow night's Thursday Nighter. And this kind of take us into a couple of other news and notes from the world of sports before we finish up. Packers now 6.5-point underdogs. This game was 6 yesterday when we picked it on the lock shop. I like the Packers to to keep it close. But man, Devontae Adams out with COVID, and now Alan Lazard as well. Aaron Rodgers could be without two, potentially his top three receivers. So we'll see what A-Rod can do in a pretty tough circumstance against an undefeated Cardinals team playing at home tomorrow on Thursday Night Football. Of course, all the lines for the NFL Week 8 are up, and make sure you check out the Lock Shop on Friday. If you haven't subscribed already and you're listening to the podcast, just search Lock Shop, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll have that one up Friday afternoon to get you ready for your pools, fantasy, and of course your bets for the weekend. Few things we mentioned. We were talking about the Florida Panthers, and this goes back to our conversation with Jeff Hamilton. Joel Quenneville is coaching tonight for Florida. He's going to be traveling to New York City tomorrow for his meeting with Gary Bettman. And I believe the quote was today, I think you need to eliminate all distractions. I sort of get what his job is and what he's trying to do. But holy smokes, that sort of is an unfortunate line when you consider what came out of yesterday's report on what happened in 2010.
Yeah, that was a real tough one to read. I believe he did say that, heading into tonight. And, I know he's got his meeting with Gary Bettman tomorrow, but I don't know. They probably don't need to have him on the bench. Maybe take a seat until you have the meeting. That was a tough. I mean, that's the reason why we're here. I believe he said, or he didn't say it. It was someone alleged that he said in the report, we can't be dealing with this or something like that during the Cup final, and it's all just horrible to read that report and some of the stuff that's in there. So yeah, he'll be behind the bench there for Florida.
Yeah. The other thing, of course, the Blackhawks owners addressed the team yesterday. They also addressed the media looking to move forward. As of today, now that Stan Bowman is gone or stepped aside, as they said yesterday, no executives that were with that club in 2010 are still with the Blackhawks. Really, the remaining things coming out of this is not really anything to do with Chicago at this point. Now that Stan Bowman's out and out with USA Hockey, it's Joel Quenneville's status with the Florida Panthers, and of course Kevin Cheveldayoff here in Winnipeg. And both of those individuals will be meeting with Gary Bettman, commissioner of the NHL, in the very near future. As far as this game tonight, I have no idea what to expect from the Blackhawks. They've already been horrible, 0-5-1 on the year. They still haven't yet to lead a game, and Pat Kane and Jonathan Taves, along with three of their teammates and three coaches, all out for this game tonight. I'll tell you what, Reem, if the Leafs do not win this game tonight, both Leafs post-game show and morning shows in the Toronto area might be must listen, because we might be able to hear it from here. People will be freaking out that much if they don't get a W tonight in this circumstance, considering what their opponents are dealing with.
Yeah, on Saturday, there's been a couple games, but Friday against San Jose, I was doing fantasy. I was like, yeah, well, sure, let's go Marner, Matthews. They haven't done anything all year. This is a perfect opportunity. Didn't go so hot. And then Saturday, Pittsburgh, they don't have Crosby, Malkin, Rust, Letang. They're missing all these dudes. Yeah, the Leafs should smoke these guys, right? The Leafs have so much talent. And
7-1.
They lost 7-1. So I think Leafs fans are nervous going into tonight against a Chicago team which is missing a number of players in COVID protocol. Again, a lot of off-ice stuff. I saw Alex DeBrincat had some nice quotes this morning. The Toronto media, of course, getting all their questions in, and Chicago media as well. But Chicago hasn't led all year. Will they get their first lead? They're scoring the first goal tonight. What's the odds on that? So I'll probably be tuning in.
Will they have a lead? Maybe we could put that, get the Cool Bet guys to post that out tonight. At any point, will the Blackhawks lead? What are the odds on that? Plus 172. I might put a touch on that. I've been hot lately. That would be a great bet to win, because it would be so fun to watch the Hawks if they can get that win tonight. There are some great news stories in and around Manitoba and Winnipeg hockey.
Yeah. Well, you got to get.
Moose,
I was gonna say, you got to get to the first one that they changed the time of.
Well, I was actually going to finish with that.
You'll save the best for last. Sorry.
I was going to finish with that. Moose off until Saturday, Sunday afternoon games. Great time to take out the kids. They've got lots of Halloween festivities. We'll talk about that on the show heading into the weekend. But if you're looking for a fun daytime activity with the kids or the whole family, the arena will be the place to be this weekend for Moose hockey. And man, the Winnipeg Ice. I'm just loving this. Every single night they're playing, I'm following the game. I tweeted out afterwards. They did it again, starting off this road trip. Big win last night. The Ice are 10-0 on the season, Remis. They continue their road trip to Calgary tonight. And they really are the talk of the Western Hockey League and junior hockey. And tell you what, it was a tough road trip. They've got some games, out on the road, a number of them. But, man, the way this team is playing, they find a way to win night in and night out. And can't wait to see them back at the Ice Cave and get out to some more games to see what this team's capable of in person.
Yes, I need to do that. I need to go see because they're dominating. They're winning by a lot, scoring. I mean, their goal differential, absolutely ridiculous. So, yes, we'll have to text Brian Munz and let him know we need to come down.
We'll get Munzie from the road at some point, and certainly we'll maybe catch up with Fink or the Goose from the Moose before coming up this weekend as we spend a lot of time focusing on the Jets. Lots of great things happening with our hockey teams, and it's a good time to focus on those teams this week because the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, a well-earned bye week, no game this weekend for the Blue and Gold. They'll get back on the practice field next week, getting ready for the Montreal Alouettes. And in a lot of ways, they've got a month to prepare for 60 minutes of football on December 5th. Tickets are on sale right now for this West Final to get back to the Grey Cup. And as the Bombers are rolling the hashtag out right now, hashtag defend the cup. And speaking of that game, you mentioned it, Remis. Bit of good news yesterday, and I'm not sure who to thank. I think the Jets, certainly the National Hockey League, Sportsnet would be a big part of that. I think they've heard that a lot of people weren't too pleased with the way the schedule was, and the regular season games are what they are. There's still a conflict next week with 2 games starting at the same time, which I've said a number of times is ridiculous. But I personally, just as a fan, pretty excited about December 5th right now, and even more so knowing that the game between the Leafs and Jets at Canada Life Center has been pushed from 6 o'clock back to 7, and we could very well have one of those days that I remember growing up as a kid. Afternoon game with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, night game with the Winnipeg Jets. Won't be quite as convenient to just go across Maroons Road from one stadium to the other with maybe a pit stop at McDonald's in between. But man, this could be a very special day for Winnipeg sports. It'll start off with probably some tailgating and hopefully a big Blue Bomber victory. And then I imagine there'll be a lot of people, I'll tell you, I'm going to be one of them, hightailing it from IGF down to the arena downtown just in time to hopefully get there for puck drop when the Jets take on the Toronto Maple Leafs. And tell you what, if the Bombers and Jets can get 2 wins that day, that might be one of the most fun shows in Winnipeg Sports Talk history as we get back on the air on Monday, the 6th of December.
Huss, we know it was all you. It wasn't anyone.
It wasn't all me.
It was all you. Everyone in chat is thanking you. We had people on our Facebook comments say they heard you. We put out the video last week. It got around 10,000 views.
Did it really?
Who do we need to get mad at? Who do we need to send angry emails to?
Well, for the record,
it was all you. You did it. For the record, it was not all me. I think there was some common sense. And again, I had no issue with the 5th. My issue was last Saturday and next Saturday. I thought that it was insane and frankly dumb and kind of disrespectful to fans and then the real key fans that are, to be honest, the backbone of this Winnipeg sports community that are spending a lot of money supporting both teams with season tickets. A lot of those are corporate, but there's also a lot of people. And it just didn't make any sense. So the fact that there was 2 Saturdays in 3 weeks that the 2 games were starting at the same time, I thought was really unfortunate, unfair, and shouldn't be happening.
The December 5th game, I'm really happy with what's been done. I think it's fantastic for fans. It makes a lot of sense for both teams. But I wasn't complaining about that. I mean, there's no guarantee that, your team is going to be in the West Final. I mean, when was the last time the Bombers hosted the West Final? I know they hosted the East Final in 2011. Other than that, I mean, it's been decades. So the fact that they were able to react, I do think that they did hear from a lot of people, and maybe our show was a little part of it as well, saying that it didn't make any sense in a small market like this to have your two biggest teams playing at the same time, making people choose. But honestly, I had no issue with the 5th. I mean, hey, if you missed the first period because you want to stay till the end of the football game, hey, you know what? First world problems. But I will say this, very thankful that they did do that. I think it makes a lot of sense. Certainly from a TV perspective, I think there'll be more people that'll be excited. Even if they're not able to go to the Jet game, they'll be finishing the Blue Bombers, hopefully in great spirits after a blue and gold win, and then heading either to a watering hole home or down to the game to see the Jets and Leafs go at it at 7 o'clock. So everyone that was involved in that decision, both from the Jets, the Bombers, the TV people, thank you. Great decision. That's going to be a very special day for Winnipeg sports fans here. And as I said, hopefully creating an amazing Monday show here on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
Just got to chime in, clear something, that the December 5th game is on TSN. So I'm sure TSN 3 was like, well, we can't have these overlapping.
Oh, it's a TSN game.
Yeah, Sportsnet. I think Sportsnet bailed on hometown hockey on Sunday nights.
Oh, you know what? I think they moved hometown hockey to Monday.
I think it's Monday now.
Because I know there was a whole whackload of Monday games, and that might make sense. I was kind of wondering why there were some more Monday games. So, well, you know what? Maybe that is it. Maybe it's the fact that it wasn't the two TV beasts going at each other and trying to screw each other, but work it out. Whatever it is, I'm happy.
Who cares?
No complaints. It's great. We'll be able to watch the Bombers and then hightail it downtown and watch the Jets take on the Leafs. That will be an amazing day. If you don't have your tickets yet for the Bomber game, get on it. They're going quickly. This team deserves a great crowd. Even if it is December 5th, we're Winnipeggers. We'll be bundled up. We know what it's like to be outside, and we know what it's like to see a football team dominate because this team has been doing it for 11 games so far. 3 to go before it counts. 5th of December, West Final, 3:30 p.m. And then hopefully the Chaser will be a great hockey game downtown between the Jets and the Leafs. So, hey, I do want to give a big shout out and a congratulations to a good friend of mine, a good friend of the program, one of the great moose of all time, Nolan Baumgartner, going into the American Hockey League Hall of Fame. Couldn't think of a better, more deserving guy. We'll certainly have him on the program at some point soon. But Remo, I know you've had cross paths with Bomber over the course of the years. I mean, I did it first before I got into this business. He was one of my favorite guys from a staff-player relationship, and certainly now with what he's done in his post-playing career, has been a great guy to have on the program back on the old TSN days. So great to see Nolan Baumgartner going in. Of course, he's continuing a very successful burgeoning coaching career. And I guess the other big news is Dusty and Eric in Edmonton this morning. The crack pack is back because Tim Hortons hockey cards are back, Remis, and I think we may have to be doing some openings on the show in future editions of WST. I'm interested to see what Jets are in the set.
I do need to go. There's a Tim Hortons around the corner from me, so I'll have to hit that up. I do want to say, Huss, we have your resume. You changed the time of the Banjo Bowl to Saturday. You moved the time.
That was my favorite
of the Jets game. Rob Mahoney wants to know, what should we get you on next? What are we changing next? Who?
A voice for change in the sporting community.
What minor changes do we need to get that make too much sense? Hey, you know what? Honestly,
when it comes down to it, sometimes, and I get it. I mean, I've worked for one team before. Sometimes, and I get it. People's jobs are to focus on themselves and they're worried about themselves and their team. And, unfortunately, sometimes there hasn't been, enough cooperation or maybe enough communication. And in this case, it was really unfortunate because it's COVID. No one knew what the schedules were going to be like. The CFL schedule came out. It started. NHL still didn't know what happened. And it ended up being an unfortunate situation. However, the Banjo Bowl, we hit that drum for a while, but it just made too much sense not to do it. And, I don't know whether it was a powerful plea from fans to, why put this on the first weekend of NFL when Rider fans can't make it back? And honestly, that move has been a big catalyst in, creating the Banjo Bowl to be the biggest game of the year, which it already was, but it's at a whole nother level now that it's in on Saturday. You've got fans coming in from Saskatchewan, and heck, every Bomber game is special right now with the way that the team is playing. We'll talk more Bombers, certainly next week with game day, but hoping to maybe have another Bomber stop by over the course of this bye week. We'll check in with Ice and Moose. And of course, tomorrow, Remis right back at it with the Winnipeg Jets. And Ken Weeb's going to come on the program. Kenny will come on a little earlier tomorrow, and then probably spend a lot of time doing his hair before Kenny and Rennie begins right after our show tomorrow at 3 p.m. And that'll be a little double dip for those guys because like I see on Saturday, they'll be getting after it late at night. And for you Kenny and Rennie fans, I have committed, I guess Sean's got something going on, being appreciative of the time that those guys have come on with us. I will be jumping on with Ken in the place of Ren Saturday after the Sharks game. So if you haven't checked that out, check their page at Kenny and Rennie on YouTube, and we'll have a good time doing that as well. But lots to get to before that. Ken will join us tomorrow on the program. We will also have Murata Tesh on Friday's show, and I hope to have Mike Kelly as well, one of my favorite guys to talk about with the X's and O's, the intricacies of what we're seeing on the ice. One of the great minds in the hockey media, hoping that Mike Kelly's going to join us tomorrow as well. So overall, great show today. Again, big apologies for the end of the Jeff Hamilton interview. He was so good. We'll have Jeff back certainly next week to talk more about how this story is developing in relation to the general manager of the Winnipeg Jets, Kevin Cheveldayoff, in the aftermath of yesterday's report on the Chicago Blackhawks. And, of course, we'll see what the Jets can do tomorrow as they head to L.A. Will it be Eric Comrie's first start? We'll find out maybe later today after practice. Certainly we'll talk about it tomorrow on the program with the latest from the morning skate and more with Ken Wiebe on the program and your latest on the Winnipeg Jets. Thanks again to Princess Auto, Little Brown Jug, Boston Pizza, Not Auto Corp, Canadian Club, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, our betting partner Coolbet Canada, Culligan Water, Manitoba Battery, and our great friends from Day One Royal Sports. Been a great show. Have a great one today, folks. We will talk to you tomorrow, hopefully with no internet sabotage, 1 o'clock right here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Have a great night.
Oh, my God. Oh! Shut it down. Let's go home.
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.